In Britain's green and pleasant land, everyone needs good neighbours. But a simple complaint
vicious bugger.
can become full-blown war.
Scum of the neighbour.
Call the police now.
Wrecking lives
It's almost like we're living a life in a prison.
and whole communities. Tonight, a neighbour gets violent with a 70-year-old woman.
He came at me like a raging bull, wild and angry.
One man's dream sanctuary becomes a war zone.
I was terrified when I saw them heading towards me, 3 dogs.
And there's a flasher in the midst on the Essex coast.
The sort of man that would do that sort of thing has obviously got to be a pervert.
Pensioners David and Glenys Booth moved to the historic market town of Chesterfield 25 years ago.
We moved here because it seemed a nice area and we thought it'd be a nice place to settle for our old age, really.
Famous for the Church of St Mary and All Saints with its twisted spire, the town promised to be the quiet home they dreamed of.
It was lovely. The guy that lived here was quiet, friendly. They looked after my cat while we were on holiday, and it was really just a nice place to be. Yes, you've had your tuna. This isn't for you.
In 2001, there were some new arrivals in the cul-de-sac. An ex-boxing coach and his family moved into the house on the corner of the Booths Drive.
We had a new neighbour arrive with 2 young boys, and the children used to run about in the close and go on people's gardens that we hadn't been used to before. We were always told to respect other people's property, and we began to realise that they weren't the same sort of neighbour that we were used to.
And Glenys had other concerns.
The bushes here were hanging over the drive and catching the car. They belonged to the new neighbour, and I thought it was polite to go and ask if I could cut them back. And I was told in no uncertain terms that I couldn't, and I would have to wait until he wanted them doing. He said, "You've got plenty of room on your drive." I realised then that it wasn't going to be an easy ride for us.
Determined to clear her drive, but not wanting to make a fuss, Glenys trimmed the bushes herself.
I thought I was being neighbourly and doing a favour.
Bushes dealt with, the couple felt their neighbour was blocking their drive in other ways.
This is the sort of thing he does. He'd put his bins out and he'll make sure they're over our drive to stop us getting out with the car. We have to remove them so that we can now get out of our own property.
Their neighbour denies all of Glenys's allegations and recalls things differently. His words are voiced by an actor.
At no time, in all the years I've lived there, have I heard of a wheelie bin issue. The Booths have never discussed this with me in that time, and considering we regarded each other as friends, I find this comment bizarre.
He admits when he first moved in, the Booths did make a scene about his bush, which was witnessed by others on the street.
It was hanging over their drive by 2 inches. But, you know, if that bothered them, I would respect their feelings and keep my plant levels within the boundary.
With the Booths taking care of their driveway, an uneasy peace settled on the street, and their neighbour says he was not aware of any other problems with his neighbours. But one evening, after a trip to town, the Booths got the shock of their lives.
We came in, it was bright. It was like daylight in here. It was a 400 or 500 watt floodlight that was shining directly into our lounge. I couldn't believe how bright it was. It just lit the place up. Well, I went straight to the window and pulled the curtains over to block it out because it was so bright, it was blinding, in fact.
The light seemed to be coming from the neighbours' back garden, and it stayed on until 11:30 p.m.
This is where the light was installed. It was installed there, and it was so hot, it burnt a hole straight through the trellis. My personal view is that the only reason you could put a light like that wasn't no good to yourself was to intimidate us, to make us uncomfortable and make us feel that he was taking charge of us.
I did have a halogen light on my decking for washing and cleaning our mountain bikes after winter rides, which is every week. It was too hot, and I replaced it the next day with a different one. I don't see how the Booths think that was about them.
Feeling the spotlight into their front room was harassment. Glenys called the police, who told her to log any threatening behaviour. With the light removed, Glenys said her neighbour then invaded their space in a new way.
I came home from town one day, got to the end of the drive. What's here? Part of a shed. And at that moment I saw him going round the corner of his house, and I thought, oh yeah, it's got to be something to do with him. Proceeding to erect a shed on the side of his property. But this is our drive, right up to the end of here. And this is his property, is where the pebbles are there. The only way that you could obviously get into this is to use our property to access it. What happens if one of the cars is here, a visitor or anybody, or we've got a van or something here? You can't do it. It's not possible.
The neighbour says he found his neighbour's reaction surprising.
They both charged out, wagging fingers angrily and shouting about the access. I was shocked, as this was the first crossword I'd had with them in 15 years. They went away and returned with a piece of paper.
I came out with the document that we'd received to prove that it's our property and handed them to him, whereupon he screwed them up, threw them back at me and said, "It might interest you, it doesn't me."
But that wasn't the end of it. The neighbour wanted to explain why he needed to use their driveway.
They listened quietly at the door until I'd finished and then shouted, "There will be no compromise," and then slammed the door shut.
But the Booths remember the confrontation differently.
He said, "Look, I don't want to fall out with you, but I need to use that, I need more space."
But Glenys was determined to keep her driveway private and firmly stood her ground.
And we said, "No, we haven't got our permission." And he said, "You want the neighbour from hell, you've got him," and stormed off.
Coming up, in Norfolk, a new neighbour leaves one landowner feeling his days are numbered.
To be honest, I've never been so fearful of my life.
And one man's actions leaves his neighbours reeling.
He had his penis in one hand, making gestures with that, and waving with his other hand as if to say, "Look at me, look at me."
Frinton-on-Sea by the Essex coast. With little over 2,000 households, it's a peaceful place. And just what Bob Clough was looking for in his later years.
I wanted somewhere that was quiet, not too many youngsters about, people of my own sort of age. I came and viewed this place and I liked it straight away.
As the new man on the block, Bob was in his element. And even fresh friendship wasn't far away, in the shape of neighbour Michael Last.
I hadn't been here very long and he introduced himself to me, and we seemed to have a common sort of liking for old cars, classics and things like that. We sort of got friendly, and he used to come over here, I don't know, probably once a month, and we'd sit out here for a couple of hours and have a beer or a glass of juice and just reminisce on old times and things like that. I'd say he was average looking, reasonably smartly dressed, fairly well spoken, and he just seemed a really nice guy. But he didn't seem to have many friends here, and nobody talked to him, because you know he should have been in a prison. So I said, no, what was that for? He said, I was involved with the Cray twins. I got sent to prison for a firearms offence. I didn't quite believe him.
Although Bob was dubious about his new friend's gangster connections, his past did hold a sinister secret that would soon come to light. All would be revealed one afternoon as Michael's 86-year-old next-door neighbour Nellie was preparing food in her kitchen.
The first that I'd heard about Nellie was the police knocked on my door the following day. I was shocked when I opened the door and there was a policeman there, and he said there'd been an incident where Michael had exposed himself. I just felt disgusted. I didn't really understand that he was capable of doing something like that. He didn't appear to be that sort of person. And I was annoyed for being taken in by him.
Wanting to find out more, Bob headed over to Nellie's house.
We're in Nellie's kitchen now. Nellie was at the sink here, and she looked up and saw Michael, head and shoulders only, or like waist up, in the window, just there. And he was standing on a chair with no clothes on. The fence is, I would say, 4'6". If you were to stand on a chair, you would definitely get your genitals above the fence. I felt very upset that because a lady like Nellie would be like my mum to me.
Nellie was too upset to talk about the incident publicly and refused to give a statement to the police, so no charges were brought.
The sort of man that would do that sort of thing has obviously got to be a pervert.
Bob soon discovered that this was not the first act of indecency Michael Last had committed. Shirley Francis's garden backs onto his, and 7 years prior, she had also been a victim of her neighbour's lewd behaviour.
The day Michael came to my attention, it was night time. We needed a blanket from the spare bedroom. As I was going up for the blanket, I noticed all these lights on in the back garden behind me. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There was Michael standing there, stark naked. He had his penis in one hand, making gestures with that, and waving with his other hand as if to say, look at me, look at me. He was obviously excited that he'd got somebody's attention. We had a policeman and a police lady come round to take statements, and then they went round to see Michael. And he admitted it straight away, but proudly told the police lady, isn't it good that I can still get such a big erection and can do all this? He wasn't ashamed or remorseful. He was proud. I was paranoid. I wouldn't go into the rooms at the back of the house upstairs for a long time, which isn't easy because one of them is my bathroom. And although he was 40 foot away at the time, he could have been 5 or 6 foot away, the way it made me feel. It makes my heart go, just thinking about it. My immediate reaction was I wanted to get as far away from him as possible. I felt almost ashamed that I'd been witness to this.
Michael's history was becoming clear to Bob, and their once firm friendship was over. But when the opportunity arose, his former pal was soon up to his old tricks. Michael Argyroux found the perfect setting to escape to. But when he got the wrong neighbour, his little piece of heaven became a little piece of hell. 4 years ago, nature lover Michael bought a 5-acre plot of Norfolk paradise to create his very own home from home.
Sounds like a robin somewhere nearby. I fell in love with it really because it was very landscaped, had a lake, had a bit of sort of heathland, some woods with it as well, so it had a nice combination of different aspects to it. Yeah, growing up really, I kind of dreamed rather than most people of having a house. I kind of always wished for a piece of land. So yeah, I thought, you know, this is the perfect place for me. It's got everything I want really. It's really beautiful, lots of nature. So yeah, I was really happy when I got it.
Michael planned to spend every moment he could in his 5-acre haven.
My friend helped me install the wood burner, and we just kind of knocked the chimney together with a few bits of pipe, just a few bits of kindling to get it going. Shortly after buying the land, I thought it'd be nice to spend some nights down here, so I stayed in my caravan here. It's really nice and tranquil in the mornings to wake up to the birdsong, deer wandering through the woods and foxes coming through. Yeah, it was exactly what I wanted.
But just 6 months after he began creating his woodland retreat, Michael discovered someone had bought the neighbouring plot.
I was here one day, one afternoon, with a friend, and we were just kind of chatting, and when I glanced up, I noticed this man standing over at the fence line there. He was on the other side of the fence, just kind of standing, staring. I had the feeling that he was just kind of spying on us, you know. I introduced myself, you know, and he told me a little bit about himself. He also was telling me how much land he'd got and asking me how much land I'd got, which isn't really an issue to me. It was like a sort of, you know, have I got more than you kind of thing. For an initial meeting, you know, I thought he was being a little bit kind of nosy.
Michael gave his new neighbour the benefit of the doubt. But within weeks of their first meeting, he suspected that his new neighbour had moved onto the land permanently, something he thought was banned by local bylaws.
He was camping at his land. I would leave the land late at night and he would still be there, and if I got there in the morning, he would be there in the morning, sort of sometimes just emerging from his tent at sort of 7 in the morning.
Michael Argerous says he contacted the council purely to check the rules, and they confirmed that living on the plot wasn't allowed.
Shortly after, he did confront me about it and said that I grassed him up. And I said, well, no, I didn't, because intentionally I hadn't done that. I was just inquiring for myself.
With relations cooling fast, Michael became concerned about the arrival of more new next-door neighbours.
There's possibly 4 or 5 in there at the moment, adult dogs. They seem very wild, very large, powerful dogs, and didn't really bear thinking about the consequences if they attacked someone.
And Michael wasn't the only local who was concerned.
At first, I was fairly sympathetic. You know, he's a chap who wants his own patch of land to do what he wants on, grow something, keep a few animals, etc. But the dogs are bull mastiffs. They're very strong. They're completely unsocialised. They don't know the difference between their territory and everyone else's. So quite a lot of people are frightened of those dogs.
We asked the neighbour for his side of the story, but he didn't want to take part. But a year after his neighbour moved in, Michael's worst fears were going to come true.
So I got about here somewhere, and then I noticed the 3 of his dogs were approximately 5-6 metres away. And they seemed to burst out from their pen, which couldn't have been very secure. I was terrified when I saw them heading towards me, 3 dogs running at full force towards me. To be honest, I've never been so fearful of my life. They were obviously after me, and they just jumped the fence. And I had, like I say, a split second to react and decide what I was going to do.
In Chesterfield, David and Glenys Booth's quiet life had turned into a nightmare after a series of arguments with their neighbour about their driveway.
To threaten to be a neighbour from hell, you don't know what to expect from someone. And so we were worried and scared, because who knows what it could do.
The Booths decided they needed to keep a watch over their property 24 hours a day and installed 4 CCTV cameras.
Here's our neighbour coming down the drive to check the cameras out.
And that's when we saw these thumbs up, as much as to say, well, you're never going to stop me doing this. I will continue.
Their neighbour carried on using their driveway to access his shed. The Booths had had enough.
We went to see the solicitor and explained what had happened. He told us he was trespassing, it was not allowed, it was our property solely. So the solicitor wrote to him and told him that he had to either remove it or modify the shed, so he didn't use our property.
6 weeks later, their neighbour wrote back to the Booths' solicitor. He claimed that his sheds would only be there temporarily.
And he replied with a letter full of lies and waffle, really.
Their neighbour told us what Mrs. Booth claims was waffle was him questioning their motive for installing so many CCTV cameras, and says he was confused by the Booths' sudden possessiveness over their drive.
For 15 years prior, I had tended plants down the side of my house and front garden with no access issues.
The Booths said their neighbour made his feelings about the CCTV very clear.
As soon as we opened the curtains, that is staring at us, as you can see, right in front of your eyes. It's an eyesore. It looks awful. You're looking at me, I'm looking at you, but in a different manner. And that's what that's all about, as far as I'm concerned. But look at it, it's an absolute eyesore.
I have placed another fence panel up to try and stop what their cameras can film for my own privacy. It's all I had in the garden at the time, as it was what my sons used for archery practice.
But it wasn't long before there was something else concerning Mr. and Mrs. Booth. After returning home from a game of darts, David Booth noticed another neighbour's bin was very close to his boundary.
When I got to this point here, the bin was here, the green bin, and it had been moved from a position over there to the edge here. And when I saw it, I found it quite upsetting, and considered it very childish. So I banged it 3 or 4 times. And then I shouted up to the windows and I shouted childish.
So I went and I said, "Come on, David, that's not like you, come in."
The owner of the bin ignored David's banging, but one of their other neighbours was quick to respond.
I noticed that the light was on outside.
Dragged the bin across and deliberately threw it at our car, bumped it, he kept hold of it, bumped it into the car. And I thought, what the hell is he doing? Why is he doing that?
He started making gestures for me to come outside and come and fight me. And so I actually put 2 fingers up to him, and he came across to the window looking very aggressive and went hard on this window. He was hitting it that hard, I thought the window was going to come in. He wanted me to fight him. Now I'm 70-year-old and he's like 46 or 7 or something, and he wants to fight me.
And then, of course, I just went outside. I said, "What do you think you're doing?" The next thing I know, grabbed the wheelie bin, spun it round, threw it at me.
Coming up, the peace in Norfolk is shattered when tempers flare.
Understand? I'm asking you.
I'm
asking
you. Do you have a problem now?
And in Essex, one neighbour's shocking past comes to light.
Everybody round here wants to see the back of him. They don't want him here anymore. He is the neighbour from hell.
In a quiet cul-de-sac in Chesterfield, violence had erupted after former boxing coach hurled a wheelie bin towards his 70-year-old neighbour, Glenys Booth.
Just missed me. And I said, "Why did you throw the bin at me?" And he said, "I didn't." I was at total shock. Well, he came at me like a raging bull, wild and angry. I put my hands up to stop him because I was sure that he was going to headbutt me. And the next thing I know, he pushed me violently. and he threw me to the ground.
I did not bang their window or come out like a raging bull. All of those were disproved in court by their own CCTV.
I fell very heavily, obviously. I wasn't expecting to go down. I banged my head on the paving slabs.
She didn't bang her head. Their CCTV shows that. I then tried to help her up, which she refused, which is also on their CCTV.
I bruised my left buttock. I had bruising to this arm and cuts on my fingers.
Their neighbour claims his actions were in self-defence.
I put my hands behind my back and she grabbed my throat. You know, I pushed her hands away and she fell over. She claims I pushed her over.
As Glennis's sister-in-law rushed to her aid, their neighbour's partner tried to drag him away.
He wasn't shocked, he wasn't sorry. He was out to get somebody that night and it happened to be me. I was dazed, I was in shock. And my husband sat up half the night with me because I'd hit my head badly.
The immediate reaction was disgust. Disgust that somebody had attacked a pensioner, a lady in her 70th year. What kind of man would do that? I can only feel disgust for that person.
The police came out, took a statement from me, took photographs of my bruising and injuries.
Their neighbour was questioned by police and released on bail. But he continued to use the booth's driveway and was caught on their CCTV cameras.
He still continued to use our property. He just doesn't seem to want to let up at all.
On an isolated woodland plot in Norfolk, Michael Argeroux had been cornered by 3 escaped bull mastiffs belonging to his next-door neighbour.
I quickly grabbed a log such as this that was completely rotten, not much use. I was swinging the stick around, trying to keep them away, and they were snarling, moving in and out, drooling, and I thought, well, you know, I don't stand a chance here. If one gets me down, then they're all going to have a go at me.
When the dogs were momentarily distracted, he grabbed his chance.
So at that point, I kind of ran over here, but looking back, they'd suddenly noticed and they were right behind me again. So I just had to jump over here, but I caught my leg as I went over. I was shaking. I mean, these are probably 10 stone dogs each, and you know, the 3 of them together, if they'd got me down to the ground, probably would have ripped me apart. So I ran over here as quickly as I could, managed to get in just as the male dog was about to jump over, got inside the caravan and shut the door as quickly as I could. So,
trapped in his own woodland sanctuary, Michael says it was some time before he got a phone signal to text his neighbour.
20 minutes later or so, he arrived and just kind of shrugged it off and laughed about it, saying, they won't hurt you, you know, they're all right, which, to be honest, I didn't feel they were safe. I was still shaking from it. And, you know, needless to say, it happened many times again since then.
Now fearful of being alone on his own land, Michael reported their neighbour to the council's dog warden, but nothing was done. And it wasn't long before he'd upset his neighbours again when he took an unusual delivery: rubber tyres.
It was a 22-ton payload on a lorry that delivered them. It looks an eyesore.
He was then starting to fill them as well with not only soil, but some of his dog excrement, the associated flies, the smell, maggots, whatever. To be honest, I thought, is he doing this to try and get to me?
Together with other neighbours, Michael contacted the Environment Agency about the tyres, but was told nothing could be done. By this stage, Michael was convinced that his neighbour was deliberately trying to provoke him.
One day I was coming up here on my motorbike and I noticed there was 3 or 4 large pieces of concrete placed down to the right here in a small pile. My first thought was, has he done this to purposely mess up my van, knowing that I regularly reverse up this track and round this corner?
Michael decided to record his conversation.
What's the purpose of those rocks there? I don't know, I just thought you might have done it.
So he continued to deny it, and then he started getting very aggressive.
I just know.
Pissed off with you.
Listen, I'm asking you because you're here all the time, all right?
What? I'm not your guard dog, right? What goes on over there is nothing to do with me. Understand?
Right, I'm asking you. I'm asking you because you're here all the time.
I was quite astounded, really, by his reaction. Then at one point as well, he picked a rock up from the ground and took a backward sort of swing as though he was going to launch it at me.
You try a rock at me, mate?
What? I come round there and smash head in.
Really?
What? Call the police now, because that's what I'm going to do, you know. You pest me one more time, I'll punch lights out.
I left it at that. I didn't antagonise him anymore, didn't swear at him, and left the land and proceeded to report that incident to the police.
Thanks to Michael's audio recording, his neighbour received a 6-month conditional discharge for threatening behaviour. But by now, the peace and quiet of Michael's refuge had been destroyed.
Knowing that he was here every night, you know, and if I stayed here quite late at night, with his unpredictable nature, you know, he could be hiding up anywhere. If you're up here on your own, you don't know what's going through his mind, what he's thinking, you know.
And the trouble between the two neighbours was only just beginning. In Frinton-on-Sea, retiree Bob Clough had thought he'd found his perfect home. And alongside that, he'd also found a friend in Michael Last.
I didn't know anybody in the area. It was nice to have somebody to talk to.
But this friendship was about to take a dramatic turn.
Whenever he was on the front of his property, I used to totally ignore him. I think he knew then that I knew all about him.
Michael Last's penchant for performing in public had turned Bob and his other neighbours against him.
He had his penis in one hand, making gestures with that. I was so shocked.
He was standing on a chair with no clothes on. I feel so let down by him, really.
Despite the fact that Michael's behaviour had cost him his friendship with Bob, months later, he was at it again.
We were putting a curtain rail up in the bedroom. It was a Saturday, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Anne's house backs onto Michael's garden. She is asked not to be shown in this programme.
Michael started to wave to us, which we just totally ignored. He kept on disappearing into his property and then coming back out again. Each time he came out, he seemed to be wearing less clothes. He just kept going on and then started to play with himself. I think my husband went downstairs and phoned Bob.
He said to me, the pervert's performing again. I don't know what to do. And I said, best thing we can do is call the police. I said, but I'll come round with my camera and we'll try and get some evidence on film. I looked through the Venetian blinds and I could see Michael in the garden. I got the camera out, took a few photos. He was absolutely stark naked, masturbating.
He also, at one stage, put on a white shirt and took it off and made hand gestures to me to remove my top.
He's actually standing there performing an indecent act. I said, we got him now, Anne. I said, he won't get away with this now.
With the charge of indecent exposure and photographs of the offence supplied to the police, Last pleaded guilty. The court heard he had a history of exposing himself when he was drunk.
He was sentenced to a 3-year community rehabilitation order, a 3-year supervision order, and fined £1,200.
I felt disappointed that having got the evidence, he wasn't given a term in prison.
Michael's sentence, I thought, was very lenient. Basically, they've just slapped him on the wrist and put him back into society for society to police him again.
The judge said that he must be allowed to come back to his own home, that he was only going to decorate, do it up a bit and then put it on the market to sell.
The neighbours hoped that peace would return to their seaside community, but the judge allowed Michael to return to Frinton.
Anne phoned me. Bob, she said, he's performing again, I don't know what to do. I said, oh, don't worry, I'll phone the police. I said, and like, they'll come straight round to you.
I had walked up into the bedroom to use the computer and all the curtains were open.
He pulled all the curtains back, took the net curtains down and was standing on a chair.
His head was very high up in the window so that his genitals could be seen. I found his actions quite disgusting and didn't really want to look, so once the police arrived, I just walked away.
He was masturbating in front of the two police officers and they immediately went round there and arrested him.
This time, Michael Lass received a 15-month prison sentence. And what came to light was that his history of indecent exposure could be traced back over 4 decades.
It wasn't until he exposed himself to Anne that we found out that he'd been doing this since 1972. We don't know when he's coming back for certain, but we know that he will be coming back.
This was supposed to be our final forever home. If we were to try to put it on the market with the laws of disclosure nowadays, nobody would even consider buying this house with a neighbour like Michael behind.
Everybody round here wants to see the back of him. They don't want him here anymore. He's caused so much upset. He is the neighbour from hell.
Still to come, in Chesterfield, the warring neighbours end up in court.
To say that I attacked him was absolutely ludicrous.
And fists fly in Norfolk.
It was like a man possessed. He just exploded.
In Chesterfield, pensioner Glenys Booth and her neighbours had an explosive nighttime confrontation. 4 months later, her neighbour was charged with assault, which he denied, and in December 2015, his trial came to court.
They said I'd attacked him and he was protecting himself. I mean, you've only got to look at the width of him. How could I possibly do anything to hurt him?
With the Booth's CCTV footage as evidence, their neighbour was found guilty of assault by beating and given 60 hours community service. He also had to pay Glenys £100 compensation and was given a restraining order, meaning he can't contact her directly or indirectly for a year.
I'm worried that when the year finishes, that he'll start a campaign again against me. And what can I do about that? I think 1 year was, well, certainly not enough in my mind. We've been going through this for over a year anyway. And just to give him a year then, well, not very good at all. I'm very disappointed.
Whilst their neighbour accepts the verdict of the court, he still considers the Booth's CCTV cameras to be invasive and feels the Booths go out of their way to provoke a response from him.
We are living next door to two people who are on a campaign to make our lives hell.
But the Booths claim the assault has taken a heavy toll on them and changed the way they feel about a street they've called home for 25 years.
Oh, I tremble. I tremble. I can't wait to get inside my own front door. I feel that someone has to be with me all the time now. I'm afraid to go far on my own because who knows what he might do.
In Norfolk, Michael Argeroux was afraid to go to his own woodland retreat after threats and aggression from his next-door neighbour and his bull mastiff dogs.
I'll come round there and smash your fucking head in.
Really?
What? Call the police now, because that's what I'm going to do if you don't fuck off.
He sounded like a man possessed, and I thought, you know, he's definitely a threat.
Having shared neighbouring plots for 3 years, Michael started recording whenever he was on his land. And in March 2015, after Michael bought the driveway between the two plots, the pair crossed swords.
I was sitting in my van here at the time on my land, and then I noticed him come out of his pony tunnel from the right and approach his tyre wall, which was there at the time. And then as I came past, he kind of stared at me. I glanced at him, at which point he came over to my window and said, I hear you've bought the driveway. You own the driveway, don't you? And I didn't answer him. And then in a split second after that, I wasn't expecting it, he swung in through the window of the van, punched me hard in the face. My head sort of thrashed back, and I think he landed maybe 2 or 3 before I really knew what was going on, to be honest. Yeah, it completely came out of the blue. It was like a man possessed. He just exploded. There's a little bit of blood from my lip that splattered onto the rearview mirror. He split my lip open.
Michael says the camera stopped filming when he grabbed it to get away. When Michael reported the incident to the police, they were more interested in other footage on the camera, which showed that Michael had been filming his neighbour.
This is the 4th of the 3rd, 2015.
They informed me that they were going to issue me with a caution that I apparently had harassed him for approximately the past 3 years or so. I couldn't believe that. I then refused to accept the caution because I know I've done nothing wrong, and I said, fine, I'll go to court to defend my name.
Michael now faced harassment charges and a court battle.
I knew, obviously, that I was innocent, but still you hear horror stories of when things go wrong and you get charged with something that you haven't done.
In March 2016, Michael appeared at Norwich Magistrates Court.
Totally positive result, no case to answer, acquitted. There was no harassment from me over the past 3 years at all. So yeah, I'm feeling very happy about it. Positive result.
After the court case, we approached his neighbour for his side of the story.
Stop filming now.
His neighbour was later charged with threatening behaviour over the incident in the driveway when Michael claims he was assaulted.
And I never know what's next to occur when I go to my land, whether I'm going to be attacked, accused of something. You know, the dogs get out and attack me. It's horrendous, really. 4 years of absolute stress.
In May 2016, the court found his neighbour not guilty. The two men still own neighbouring plots in their woodland sanctuary.
Initially, when I came here, you know, I was really happy on the plot of land that I had. I had great ideas, you know, but it's sort of tainted that whole feeling now. It's just, it's not the place it once was.